We are live. Good morning and welcome back to the AWS Twitch channel. And for those of you watching us on YouTube, welcome. This is What's New in AWS, brought to you by AWS Enterprise Support. With me, I have Mr. Platts, with Mr. Matthew Platts, and a special guest today, Andrew Goifeld. Give us a wave, guys.
Hey, Mark. How you doing? Hey, Andrew.
I'm well. I'm really well. I'm really well. Where are you dialing in from, Andrew? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm dialing in from the sunny Sydney with the warmest weather that's out there today. You know, it's. I think I heard rumors that it's the coldest morning on record for like 37 years or something like that. It's absolutely beautiful in sunny Sydney. My car got a frostbite.
With my hot water bottle.
Yes.
Love it. Well, we've got a bunch of things to go over today, and we're going to be running for probably about 30, 45 minutes. We're going to cover resilience first, and then we're going to jump into some compute releases. But Andrew, I know resilience is something that's close to your heart. I know you just love all things that stand the test of time, stand all weather. Why don't we start there? I know Resilience Hub is something new for us. Can you kick us off and tell us a bit about Resilience Hub and why customers should get excited about it or interested in it? Take it away.
Yeah, awesome. So, first of all, Resilience Hub has been around for quite some time. What's cool about today is I think it's coming a lot more to the forefront, and I've kind of really wanted to talk about it because there's just been a lot of new features that's come out. But I fell in love with the service, right? As you said, resilience is close to my heart, and so what I like about Resilience Hub is it takes resilience in a very people-centric approach. I know it's a product, I know it's a service, right? And it does a lot of good things under the hood, which we can just talk about. What I really love about it is it helps people understand resilience better, right?
Is it a service like an EC2 or S3? Is it an actual technology service, or is it more about bringing ideas together and models together?
Yeah, look, so it is a service, right? And it is a paid for service, but fundamentally what it does is it analyzes resources, right? And the metadata about the resources, and puts them in a construct of resilience, right? So we have this concept of an application, okay? And then when you click the button to assess it, we say, all right, based on your goals, your resilience goals for that application, right? You will be successful or you will not be able to meet your goals. And that's the first time, right? I've been in AWS for a while, but this is the first time we've got this application construct, right? Not a resource, right? And we evaluate the entire application against the goals that you specify, right? So there's 4 steps in this Resilience Hub journey, but the value of it is like, in my opinion, it's perpetual, right? Like, when you deploy an application, most of the times our conversations have been, hey, have continuous integration, have continuous deployment, inspect it with Security Hub, look at the resources under the hood, make sure everything's current, right? So we've been looking at it from a currency point of view and a speed of operation. This is the first time that and speaking personally here, I'm taking a lens of resilience across the application space in a programmatic fashion. And
so when you say RTO, I see their RTO and RPO targets. So you're telling me that as a customer, I could come along and say, hey, AWS, I've got this application. It's got these targets. These are all of the resources that I'm looking to use in order to achieve that target. You go away and do the heavy lifting and tell me whether that's going to work or not. And if I'm correct in that, what information does the customer get back? Is it a dashboard? Is it a report? How do they consume that insight?
Yeah, so you're spot on, right? So maybe if I just take 90 seconds to do a 90-minute masterclass here, right? What we've got is, first of all, the identification of the application, which is kind of that first pillar that we're looking at there, right? So that could be, let's say, your tags, okay? And say you have 1,000 resources that are tagged with your application. That's all we need, right? And then we ask the business user to say, hey, tell us what your RPO and RTO is across a number of parameters, right? And the most important one is the application. So let's say you as an application owner will say, I want to be up in 4 hours and I never want to lose more than 4 hours worth of data. So 4 hours and 4 hours, something simple. Okay. You click the assess button and then a report comes out. And the report assesses all the resources that are supported by Resilience Hub, right? Compute, database, queuing, we've got compute database, networking. And so all of those will come out in one report. And it's called the Resilience Recommendations Report. And it'll tell you whether you're complying or non-complying with your targets.
Nice.
Now but the cool bit is that's not where it ends, right?
Hey, AG, before you jump into the next part, just maybe just reminding our audience that when you work backwards from your recovery time, that's how you can start landing on your 5 nines, your 4 nines. If you need to be back online in 2 hours, that gives you a construct on how available the resources underpinning that workload needs to be. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, and so again, what I like about this is we evaluate resources, but we group them in a context that is meaningful to the customer. Okay. So that's the key differentiator, right? What I see, I have a few conversations with customers, and we typically zero in on a particular service. Let's say EC2. It's like, are we multi-AC? Are we fault tolerant? All of the basic constructs. But we take that all the way to the application, right? And if we encompass that, this is where Resilience Hub takes it to the next level. Now, can we go to the next slide? Maybe I've got a depiction of, keep going to that. Okay, cool. Let's stay there. So what happens is when we do a deployment, right? And this is what I think is really cool. We do a deployment, we have our functionality ready to go. Happy days, our API returns are 200, okay. But what would happen if, and I know this will be generic, but let's say something happens, okay? In most of our discussions, we've been trying to have resilience on the service. This is at the app, right? Now, auto-scaling group, happy day, it's up. But what happens when the CPU goes right up to 90%? Do you know if your application will respond? You have no idea. Do you know that you have your CPU at 90% across all of your apps? Not sure. And so what we've done with Resilience Hub, and this is why I love it, I absolutely love it, is we've created the ability to track things over time. As an example, I've got what you see on the screen is, definitely my capability with colors. So,
I love those. I love those stars. I also love. I see fault injection simulator there. So, is that service used to stress test? The application that we're talking about here, so that we can shake it up a little bit and see exactly how resilient it is.
Yeah. So what you see here is that so this is me trying to make my application, my test application, more resilient. And as you can see, I never reached 100%. Okay. So it became a journey for me. Yeah, it's a score, right? And the score is made up of a number of parameters. Parameter number one is, how did you configure your infrastructure? Let's say at the basic level, did you turn on versioning for S3 bucket? Are you able to recover if you deleted it, if the operator deleted it, right? Now, we're not talking about S3 as a service, or EC2 as a service having an issue in any one area. This is resilience at the app construct. And I love that. Yeah. And I'm going to stay away from just the Resilient Hub as a service for a second. I love that for the fact that today, as more and more people walking into technology, and we have over 200 services, and each service has got over 200 features, how do you know you have an optimal config? You just don't. You don't.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah. how do you know that latest deployment didn't adversely impact your ability to stay resilient on the app? Like, to me, that's cool. That's the cool bit, right?
Over time is amazing, AG, because you can think about how many platform teams or engineering teams are working through a pretty substantial tech debt or some backlog where they're just fixing some underlying issues that they know about. And this gives them that visual to show the improvements as it applies to their workload over time. So that's pretty interesting. Yeah, I like that. And I particularly like your examples around actually introducing, like releasing the production change, right? So today it's configured in a certain way. Tomorrow we're going to do a release. We're going to update auto scaling groups to now span instances across multiple AZs. That's going to be a significant jump to availability for that application.
Correct.
And I can tell you what isn't resilient is my double checking of the slides before I upload it.
Everything fails. Everything fails. I love it.
It fails all the time. But one way to increase resilience, of course, is to think about the pipeline of deployment. So everything from the developer working on a new feature or bug, pushing that through to pre-prod environments, and then in Amazon we have a continuous deployment methodology. So things are being there's some caretaking steps that are being done, but I haven't heard of continuous resilience. So how does that sort of play into this? We now have another holy trinity that we need to remember.
So I thought this was going to be a very, very hot topic, so I put it in there. So let's just look at continuous resilience in the context of a previous slide. Let's go back to the previous slide for just 1 second. So everything about Resilience Hub is API driven, right? So now let's talk about continuous integration and continuous deployment. You've deployed your app, okay? What happens when that deployment of an extra feature was done in a non-resilient manner? Let's say you deployed another EC2 instance. Just keep it simple. This is what will allow you to say, hold on a second, you're failing a test of our goals, our business goals, right? Not AWS, but the customer's business goals of keeping the application resilient.
Right.
And because it's all CloudWatch metrics and it's alarm-based driven, and that has a tight integration, all of a sudden, continuous resilience is available inside the CI/CD loop. Okay. And that's why I kind of look at it and go, yes, all you need to do is publish your app, and because we identify the app with tags, all of a sudden you're going to get this illumination of resilience available to you with zero effort. It literally is zero.
So you don't have to, you're not waiting for a failure to determine that a change that you made 3 months ago has potentially impacted your availability.
Spot on, exactly. We've got daily assessments in Resilience Hub as a default. So you can trigger, like if you're an advanced customer and you want to go, yes, I want to go all in on triggering, my tests for resilience, you can trigger the assessment, you can trigger the experiment, the fault injection. Or if you're, in the journey of, let's say crawl, walk, run on the resilience side, you can just watch the CloudWatch metrics on a daily basis and see how your development lifecycle evolves in the context of resilience.
So, Andrew, before we roll on into the Compute Lounge, can you just tell people how they might get started with this service? Is it as easy
absolutely.
What's the lifting involved?
Yes, super simple. So couple of points. Number one is go to the AWS console, have a look at AWS Resilience Hub. The steps to get started, I think I've counted about 20 clicks, right? It's free for the first 3 applications, right? For 6 months, and it's $15 a month per application thereafter.
Okay.
Unlimited assessments. We don't count resources, so you don't have the risk of having a build shock on the back of Resilience Hub. So just start playing. Play with it in depth. Really
I like that you measured it in terms of the number of clicks required to start the service. I think we should have a metric on all our AWS services. How many clicks required to get started?
Although technically with APIs we'd have 0 clicks, right? So how do you measure that?
More keyboard though.
Well, Andrew, thanks. Why don't you stick around while we jump into the Compute Lounge? Because there's been a bunch of releases, Matt, and a bunch of a bunch of new instance types. But before we jump into that, there was one that I think we missed here, which was around dedicated hosts on Outposts.
Outposts.
Yeah. And so that I think it was released maybe 2 weeks ago. And it got me thinking that I don't know if everyone knows about Outposts and how it works. And I know you had some questions. I did a bit of a deep dive into it over the last week, but that's what it looks like. That's what you get when you on the left-hand side. That's what you get when you sign up for Outposts. I think it's a pretty good-looking rack, actually.
Yeah, well, I do need to upgrade my home lab, so I'll have a look and see if there's something there that I can reuse. But Mark, give us the general for anyone who hasn't seen it, hasn't touched it, hasn't had a chance to get it deployed in their colo. What's the high level?
A high level, okay. So I mean, there's a couple of ways you can think about it, right? So some people go straight to, well, how do you connect it? How do you connect it up? Via how do you get network connectivity to this thing? It's obviously not in an Amazon data center. It's in your own corporate data center. And very simply, you think about your VPC in your account being extended out to, wrap its arms around this rack. It sits within the same subnet. You provide 1 gigabit connectivity between your data center and the rack. And you run secure tunnels, or we run secure tunnels between the AWS region that is closest to you. So, if you're in Sydney and you want to put a rack, I don't know, somewhere in rural New South Wales, and obviously you're using the Sydney region, you would have the Sydney region as your home zone. Think of it like a home zone. And then you have this concept of an anchor point, right? So you got all of these racks sitting in our data centers in our region. And then you pick an availability zone, and this rack sort of anchors to it via an anchor point. And so that's how you think about that sort of connectivity in. So that's from a network perspective. And then really from a shared responsibility perspective, most of it stays the same. But obviously you need to make sure that your data center is doing the right things. You've got redundant power, you've got redundant networking, you're taking care of your physical security, etc. But security within the box is ours, like it would be in a traditional AWS region. So really cool, actually, really flexible offering.
So customer purchased, customer owned tin, that's AWS pre-configured, that connects into an AWS anchor point, and it gives you full integration into the existing console. To do what we do every day of deploying instances, running up some S3, and it's all homed and it's all serviced directly out of that outpost.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The only caveat is that you don't get the full suite of AWS services for that outposts, right? Most of them, EC2, a pretty big variety of instances. RDS is, you can have RDS in there. You can have ECS and EKS in there. You can have Elastic MapReduce. You can even have actually VMware Cloud on Outposts, which is a recent release. But
that's pretty cool.
The release in the last month has been so if you were using bring your own licensing, as many customers do, and you were using it on your Outpost, you previously only had the entire rack as your target for the licensing, but now you can have a dedicated host within the rack. So that's a cool feature, but I thought maybe it'd be good to just go over Outposts at a high level, because it's going to be more and more common, particularly in things like gaming, right? So I was reading this morning about something called a peaker's advantage. So if you're in a first person shooter, so the customers Riot Games, actually they released Valorant, and if you're in a first person shooter and you are 80 milliseconds as opposed to 10 milliseconds, actually, the gamers are so good now that is a huge advantage. And so they've put outposts in places where they can reduce that latency down to 5 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds for their players, and even the playing ground, so to speak. So you're going to see a lot more
enough time gaming
the last couple of years.
Your mind, Mark, goes to gaming. Mine goes straight to the stock exchange, and I'm sure there's a few of these a little bit closer to the AXX. So, but yeah, I think it's really fast. I haven't personally used it, to be honest, but I can see the use cases, right? If you've got maybe even something as simple as just a dev environment inside an office, and you just want to contain the resources, contain what they use, and contain that posture and that environment, that would make sense. But you still have the full configurable of AWS and the architecture as well, right? That can move from that dev environment all the way up to production.
Yeah, great service. Really love that. There's different sizes too, right? Isn't there? I've seen a few, like there's 2 RUs, 4 RUs. There's the full rack as well. I didn't just dream that, did I? I think you've dreamed that. Yes, you get the whole rack. Yeah, we don't sell it, people. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
all right.
or multiple rack, depending on how much high frequency trading you're doing, Matt. So
okay, all right.
Yeah, that's Outposts. But Matt, you were gonna show us a really useful tool. If you can just show your screen, a useful tool for navigating instance selection in AWS, because there are a lot of instances.
That's right.
We're 4 or 5.
Just another 4 or 5. Yeah, and that's on a big list already. And it's, many years ago it was a bit easier to know which one you probably wanted to use. There was general purpose, there was compute optimized, memory optimized, storage optimized, and now there's a bit more of a spectrum to kind of look at. So yeah, if you haven't had a chance to use it, we do have a thing called an instance type explorer. So you can go in there and go, look, I think I want to have a database workload, need a lot of memory, and it starts filtering, and it gives you that kind of starting point to consider which instances you might want to look at. So if you were to click, say, memory optimized, you're looking at R5 instances, some R6s, and then obviously you can move down to...
I think are in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, we just released the R5B. Sorry, we've just released R5B in Sydney. So the thing to remember with a lot of these instance types is that they might come out in a handful of regions first, and then they eventually sort of make their way to the rest of the region.
That's right.
So if you're using the Sydney region and a handful of others, you can now get the R5B instance types, and these ones are EBS optimized. So the trick I found is that you might have a preliminary or primary use case with these instances to say, I need an instance with a lot of memory. So I think if you scroll down there, the R5B, like the R5A, has 768 gig of memory. If you just sort of click that little arrow to scroll it down, just make sure.
No, it's just that's all it shows. We'll have to go into here if you wanted the full.
Okay, yeah, so 768 meg. Sorry.
Yeah.
But the R5B instances are optimized for EBS performance, right? So, if you need the fast memory, but you want, like you've got a lot of data that you want to transfer across from EBS, right? So you want faster loading times, faster response times. You'd go towards the R5B, but you might have cost as a driver. And so you might want to go to the GD instances, which are the Graviton instances, which I think is the first one at the top of that screen.
If we just go up
on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
Mark, which instance type would you go for to lower the latency, like from 10 milliseconds to 5 milliseconds when you're gaming?
That would be...
It depends on the workload, AG. Depends on the workload.
Oh, you mean depends on the game, right?
For sure. I mean, some of these are definitely not available in Outposts, right? So you'd want to do your homework there. But certainly the Graviton processors have been... Customers are really taking up the Graviton processors as a fast click because 55% better price performance. I mean, that's pretty significant when some of these instances can be quite expensive to run. So if that cost is your driver there, that's definitely an option.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, when you talk about R5B, Mark, I mean, to me, I always kind of tell myself lots of memory and super fast access to disk. That's where the 5Bs come in. You touched on Graviton as well. The other one I'd probably just call out as well, is with the new instances we've got around C6 IDs and also M6 as well. So basically, our general purpose and our compute optimized have hit the next generation, and pretty substantial changes, to be honest. So obviously, price performance has been optimized as well. Now we've got memory encryption as well. So that's called TME, Total Memory Encryption, that ships with the latest Intels. And there's a new size as well. So there's a 32 extra large. So if you need up to 128 vCPUs on your general purpose or your compute optimized, it's there's a lot of bang for buck there and a lot of CPU horsepower.
Yeah. Another bang for buck. Sorry, guys. Speaking about bang for buck, one thing about all of this Graviton instances that are coming out is that we're now supporting a lot of them for Lambda, right? So from January this year, there's been quite a few runtimes being available for Lambda. So what's happening with the Graviton and these new instance types is, it's faster, but because we bill for millisecond utilization, it's also cheaper.
That's right.
So it becomes a double whammy. So for those folks who don't have EC2 but are doing a lot of serverless workloads, these innovations also propagate down to Lambda, and that helps customers with serverless workloads to really lower their cost and also increase the execution capability, right? Because the faster things execute, the lower their cost, because we bill at that rate.
Yeah, and that's a good segue, actually, just jumping down to Lambda support for Node.js 16. Earlier this year, we released .NET 6 support, which is LTS, but that speaks to exactly what you were just talking about, AG, around the Graviton and ARM support as well. So if you do have the option to look at your development environment, and you can adopt Node.js, for example, 16, which now has Apple Silicon support, or you could look at .NET 6. I mean, now you are in the spectrum of using Graviton and serverless and Lambda and really pulling your workloads down to that 1 millisecond category. So that's a good call out.
Nice. Well, we've got just a couple of minutes, Matt. Maybe pick one of these three at the bottom and tell us which one most excites you. What customers could take away one of these. What would you get them to focus on?
Oh, so the curated packages in EKS Anywhere is pretty cool. So if you haven't had a chance to use Kubernetes, you can do these things called tools, right? So you just extend the core functionality of a Kubernetes cluster. So you can do things such as container registration, some networking, load balancing, but basically anything you might want to do to your Kubernetes cluster, you can extend it. Okay. So EKS Anywhere is running Kubernetes on premise in a customer's environment, right? So we've just announced a public preview of what we're calling curated packages. So it's just a way to say, hey, look, I do want to run Kubernetes on-prem. I'd like to use it through EKS Anywhere. And there's a set of tools and a set of packages that I probably want to use in my on-premise Kubernetes deployment, right? So I might want to do some stuff such as load balancing, networking, or some container registration, like I said. So now you'll be able to basically adopt our packages that we ship and we test and we verify that works off the shelf with EKS Anywhere.
Nice.
And that's awesome, right? Because it's really reducing, you could easily go to GitHub, find a tool, integrate it, make sure it doesn't break some of the other tools and do that full software integration testing. But now just looking at adopting our curated packages, it gives you a pretty good starting point for what you'd expect to be the typical tools that you'd probably want to use to extend Kubernetes in its vanilla form.
Yeah. Nice. Very nice. I like that. I'm going to have to go with that now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's. I think we're just at time. We're trying to make this short and punchy at 30 minutes. So thanks for sticking with us. We are Enterprise Support. Matt, Andrew, and I have been part of Enterprise Support for many years, helping customers across all sectors. I guess really operate their workloads in the cloud and think about things like resilience and security and scalability, as we've just touched on. So that was a lot of fun. Andrew, we might have to get you back at some point and tell us. I'm sure Resilience Hub will probably come out with some new features, and we'll get you back to talk to them.
100%. And I get an opportunity to fix my slides.
Yeah, yes, you do. We'll run Resilience Hub over the slides next time before we build it. Great. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you both. Thanks everyone for dialing in.
Thanks,
see you
team.
next month. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later.